Matt, I have to tell you, there have not been too many times in my 52 years of preaching that I hated to come up and follow the children's sermon. But today is one of them. Thank you so much. It's really difficult to reflect on the gospel reading today because it's simply so well known. It's one of the best known stories of all of Scripture. But frankly, friends, like any good story, there's always more to it. Always something new to discover, especially as we find out more about the world in which Jesus lived. Who's the main character in this story, in your mind? Is it the younger son? Is it the father? Is it the pig farmer? Maybe even the pigs? Is it the servants? Or is it the older son? It seems to me that there are way too many main characters in this story. Do you remember what prompted Jesus to tell this story in the first place? He told it to explain why he welcomed sinners and why he ate with them. He told this story because the Pharisees and the scribes were complaining. The Greek word says they were mumbling, kind of behind his back. They were mumbling about Jesus eating with sinners. Now, if you were a good rabbi back then, you never shook hands with somebody that you thought was a sinner. You never even greeted them. You would go through all kinds of purification rites if you even just touched a sinner. And you definitely would never welcome them and eat with them at your table. But Jesus did. Jesus did. Not just once, but many times in Scripture. I think the Pharisees and the scribes were like the older brother. He didn't care about his younger brother. He didn't share his father's worries about the younger son. He refused to go in. He refused to greet. He refused to shake hands. He refused to sit down and eat and party with his younger brother. So Jesus tells this story, this parable about prodigals. This story is not just about one prodigal, the younger son. This story is about prodigals, plural. The word prodigal, as we know, has a lot of different synonyms. It means extravagant and lavish and spendthrift, some good things, but it also means squandering and wasteful. And I believe that every character in this story, every character has something to say to you and to me about our being prodigals. The usual character we connect with being prodigal, of course, is the younger son, the original dirty, rotten scoundrel. First, in those days, by asking for his inheritance, younger sons in those days received a third of the family wealth. And by asking for that money from his dad, he in fact was saying to his dad, "I wish you were dead. I want my money now. I'm not waiting until you die." Now, that's not a very nice thing for a good Jewish boy to say to his dad. Second, the younger son severs any ties with his older brother for the future. Back then, land was owned by the whole family. And when the dad died, all the kids and the mother were expected to live together in kind of like a compound, we would call it today. Well, when the younger son asked for his share, he forced a division in the family, a division of the land, and that lowered the status of the family, certainly in the community. And then his actions exposed the family to a lot of community criticism. Can't you just hear the other men in that community saying, what kind of a father? What kind of a father? And by the way, Jesus doesn't even mention the mother in this story. Mother's not in it. But the people in the community could be saying, what kind of dad lets his son ride roughshod over him, allows a child to reduce his stock holdings by a third, allows a child to offend his brother? What kind of father is this? The people listening to Jesus' story were shaking their heads. You know, that younger son, that dirty, rotten scoundrel, what a spendthrift. So extravagant with his father's money, squandering the family reputation, a prodigal for sure. But wait, there's more. There are other prodigals in this story. Enter the father. Enter this father, rushing out to welcome his wasteful son. Before the son can even begin to recite this kind of canned, carefully memorized speech he'd been working on. I've had those speeches when I knew I had to go home to my parents. You get it all in your head, right? Before he can even get it out, the father starts bellowing orders. Get him a new tuxedo. Buy some tasseled black patent leather loafers. Get him a dozen new monogram shirts. Put a ring on his finger. Take my own signet ring. Give it to him. Sell the stock portfolio. It's party time. We're going to have a party. Friends, this is a prodigal father for sure. Extravagant with his welcome, with his gifts, with his love, his acceptance. His son, his beloved younger son, has come home. I always love to notice what's not in the story. Notice the father didn't wait for the son to come up to the door, knock on the door, get down on his knees, beg for permission to come in, and start going through the whole woe is me speech that he had prepared. The father didn't say to this son, told you so. You should have listened to me in the first place. I told you this would happen. Friends, in this story, Jesus told there's no moral theology here at all. There's no probationary period for the son. There's no grounding. Remember when we grounded our kids, or we got grounded? There's no grounding in this story. There is nothing but prodigal joy. Prodigal joy. The prodigal father doesn't care that he's losing his dignity in front of his neighbors by hiking up his robes and running, showing the bottoms of his feet. That wasn't done by men in those days. The prodigal son doesn't care that he's showing affection by putting his arms around his son and kissing him. In those days, only a Jewish mother was allowed to do that. The father doesn't care that he'll be condemned in the community for welcoming back this prodigal son. He's happy. He's overjoyed. He's overjoyed that this dirty, rotten scoundrel of a son has finally come home. But there's another prodigal in this story. I was an older sister. So it's hard for this older sister to talk about the older brother. Because I know if I were typecast into this story, I'd be the self-righteous, tedious, selfish, older brother. What's a father to do? The older boy won't join the party. He won't acknowledge his own brother. In fact, did you notice that he calls him this son of yours, not my brother? He snarls at his dad. You never gave me so much as a crummy pot roast, let alone a fatted calf, so I could party with my friends. Oh, the memory of those words in my family. in my older sister passed. You never let me stay out that late, and now Nancy gets to stay out way past midnight. You never let me wear skirts that short, and just look at her skirt. The elder son is prodigal too, isn't he? Extravagant in his judgment of his father and his brother. Lavish in his singing the song, "How Great I Am." I stayed here with you. I followed all the rules. You never appreciated me. What's a father to do with a son like that? Well, believe it or not, in Jesus' story, the same thing he did with the younger son. He forgives him. He tells his older son with a sweep of his hand, "Everything I have is yours." The older son had already received 2/3 of the inheritance, and now it appears that he gets it all. He's turning out to be the winner in this story, at least financially. And the father said, "We have to celebrate. Your younger son was lost, and now he's found." And then the parable abruptly stops. It stops. I imagine the musicians silent and waiting to start a new tune if the older son decides to come in. We don't know. I imagine the guests are quiet, wondering what's going to happen. I imagine servants out in the kitchen, ready to bring in the filet mignon, the fatted cat. Do we go in or not? The parable stops. Why? Why do you think Jesus did that? I think it's because Jesus wants the audience to finish the story. Jesus wants the Pharisees and the scribes to decide whether to come into Jesus' party on this earth or not. I think Jesus wants you and me, when we listen to it, to decide whether to come to the party or not. Jesus offered love and acceptance to the outcasts, and they accepted it. They accepted it. Now Jesus is offering it to the older brothers of the world. And we must decide, do we go into the party or do we boycott it? It's hard when a parable leaves us with this kind of dilemma. What character have you played in the parable? If you're the younger brother, there's a happy ending for you. Party time. Reconciled with all the people in our lives that we've been estranged from. That happened in my family. If you're the older brother or sister, well, I'd probably go somewhere and pout and forget the whole party. I'm not going to a party. I don't feel in a party mood. If you're the father, what a relief. My 2 sons are home where they belong. So, how does the party end for you? What does this parable say to you? For the 3 prodigals in the parable, and for all of us prodigals, because we all are, the good news is that we believe in a God who is a prodigal God. A prodigal God who was willing to give up everything. All that I have is yours. Even giving up being God to hang on a cross on a hill outside Jerusalem. We believe in a prodigal God who gave it all up for us so we might go into the party. We might be dressed in new clothes. We might be ready to eat the feast with joy, a feast that's been going on for 20 centuries, friends. A feast that includes dirty, rotten scoundrels, that includes self-righteous, judgmental older sisters, that includes a prodigal, forgiving father, that includes a prodigal God who welcomes you and me. Isaac Watts wrote a hymn based on Psalm 23, and one of those verses says it best to me. Tim?
Yes. The sure provisions of my God attend me all my days. Obey your house, be my abode, and all my work be praised. There would I find a settled rest, while others go and come. No more a stranger or a guest, but like a child at home.
No more a stranger or a guest, but like a child at home. Welcome home, friends. The prodigal God is waiting. So be it.